You have been lied to, and you deserve the truth. That's right. I'm back once again to demonstrate why using triple additives is crucial if you want to actually optimize your coca farm in Schedule 1. If you've been running a fertilizer-only setup just because someone told you it was most efficient, there's a very real chance that you've missed out on millions of dollars. Today, I'm breaking down all the math. We're going to compare these two setup concepts, and by the end of this video, you'll see why triple additives was the most efficient option this entire time. And as an added bonus at the end of the video, I'm gonna give you the recipe for a coca farm that is as close to perfect as you can get with the tightest ratios and full automation, gasoline included. And that's something a fertilizer-only setup couldn't do in its wildest dreams. But don't take my word for it. Let's compare side by side all the math, and you can decide for yourself. Let's start at the base level. Raw leaf production. A single botanist assigned to 6 air pots and growing coca leaves using only fertilizer will produce 72 leaves per day on average. The cost per leaf looks like this. The seed is $150, the soil use per seed is $20, and the fertilizer per seed is $30. That's $200 for 9 leaves, or $22.22 per leaf in growing costs. Now, let's compare that to a botanist using triple additives. A single botanist assigned to 7 moisture-preserving pots with triple additives will produce 170 leaves per day. The cost is $150 per seeds, $20 per soil per seed, and the triple additives per seed cost $90. That brings the total up to $260, but you also get 16 leaves, which brings our growing cost down to $16.25 per leaf. So not only are we making more leaves, but we're also producing them for cheaper. This directly influences our total profit margin, increasing it by $240 per brick. Clearly, triple additives is at the advantage already. This part should be obvious. Additives increase production. But if you've seen some of those viral Schedule 1 videos, they claim that it's impossible to make it work. The numbers just mess up the ratio, so even though it's more valuable, you can't do it. Well, I say let's stop hand waving and actually break this down bit by bit. In a 10-man property, a coca farm is optimized around 3 chemists. These 3 chemists work on a total of 6 cauldrons and 6 lab ovens. These chemists, with their cauldrons and lab ovens, are the true limiting factor of any coca production build. Now, each chemist consumes roughly 128.5 leaves per day when fully saturated. In order to keep things clean, we'll round that number up to 130. That puts our total required leaf production at 390 leaves per day. So now that we know our target, let's see how each setup actually performs. We have a 10-man limit in these properties. So in a fertilizer-only setup, we'll have 3 chemists, 1 handler, and 6 botanists. On paper, 6 botanists assigned to air pots and using only fertilizer will produce a total of 432 leaves per day. And they even have enough slots to service an extra 12 drying racks on top of what they're already doing. So on paper, it seems like this is going to work perfectly because we should be producing more than what we need with the capability to dry it. But this is where theory and reality split. Once those air pots are actually placed in a real build, they take up massive amounts of space. Now combine all of that with the fact that usually these lab ovens and cauldrons are all shoved to the back of the build just to make room for all of those air pots, and now you're stacking downtime on top of downtime. Now let's take a look at our triple additive setup. As I said before, a single botanist using 7 moisture preserving pots and triple additives can produce 170 leaves per day on average. That means with just 2 botanists dedicated to growing, we can hit 340 leaves per day. We'll then use 2 more slots to add 2 full-time drying botanists on 16 racks. Now, to finish off our remaining leaf supply, we'll add another botanist who will be back routed with a ratio of 3 pots to 5 drying racks. And this back routed botanist is actually able to grow and harvest more than 5 plants per day, which puts his average leaf production above 80. We now have a total of 17 moisture pots and 21 drying racks. And our total leaf production and drying capability is 420 leaves per day. This is well past our requirement of 390 leaves per day to ensure that the build runs at maximum uptime. Our moisture pots will also maintain 100% uptime, and since we don't have 1,000 air pots to place in here, we can actually condense the build and bring our lab ovens and our cauldrons up towards the front. Now, let's talk about the brick gap. Even though both setups use the same number of cauldrons and lab ovens, they do not produce the same. A fertilizer-only setup is going to produce an average of 7.5 bricks per day, whereas a triple additive setup actually produces consistently 9 bricks per day. The fertilizer-only setup is greatly hindered by employee walking time, and all of these inefficiencies stacking up together compound over time to lower the average production. So let's put a real dollar amount on this brick gap, because this is where it really starts to hurt. The base sale price of a single unit of coke is $150, and each brick has 20 units. That means that each brick is worth $3,000 at base price before mixing. If a fertilizer-only setup is producing 7.5 bricks per day, that means that you're not producing 1.5 bricks that you otherwise could be. And that's $4,500 per day that you're losing. It's not theoretical. That's money that you are actively not making. Go load up your save right now and check how many days you've been on in your playthrough. 100 days? 200 days? Maybe a full year? Every 100 days, that's $450,000 left on the table. And that's at base price. If you had actually made that 1.5 extra bricks per day and mixed it, you would have made an extra $1.3 million in revenue over that time period. And that's not even counting the original $240 profit margin per brick difference from the beginning of the video. All of that loss comes from one simple mistake: running a fertilizer-only setup just because somebody else told you it's efficient. Now let's pause for a quick thought experiment. Let's say that you don't believe me. Let's say that you think I'm making up all of these numbers out of thin air because your favorite YouTuber told you what's best and he can't possibly be wrong. So that means 7-Pack must just be making it all up just to troll. So then both builds are equal, right? Both producing 9 bricks. Wrong. Even if both produce 9 bricks, you forgot to count the employee slots. On the triple additive setup, we use 2 botanists for growing, 2 botanists for drying, and 1 backrouted botanist. Add in the 3 chemists, that puts us at 8. That leaves us 2 slots for handlers, which means 1 more handler than the fertilizer-only setup, which means we can automate gasoline. Or you could even swap in a cleaner if that's what you wanted to do. So what does all this mean? Any way you slice it, triple additives wins. It's better from every possible angle, whether that's a production angle, a cost angle, a profit angle, or even an employee viability angle. It all leads to this being the best way to do it, and it always has been, and it probably always will be. But I just wanted to make this video one more time before Shrooms releases, because I'm sure that something will be changing to some degree. You can bet that I'll be testing it once that happens. But for now, let's go ahead and get into this actual coca farm layout so you can make it in your save. You can build this layout in either the barn or the warehouse. Functionally, it's the exact same build. I'll start by dividing the barn into 3 zones. Zone 1 for growing, Zone 2 for cooking, and Zone 3 for drying. We'll begin with the growing zone. We're going to place 7 moisture-preserving pots on either side of the entrance in this pattern. Now, cap off the end of each row of 3 with a small storage rack. And next, place 2 large storage racks, 2 tiles in front of the entrance. Finally, to finish the growing area, we'll place 3 more moisture-preserving pot setups, 1 tile away in front of those 2 large storage racks. We can now move towards the cooking zone. On the inside of these support beams, we'll be placing a brick press. And on the outside of each support beam, we'll be placing a large storage rack. We can then place 2 lab ovens directly in between our 2 brick presses. And then we can repeat this exact pattern on either side of the barn as well. Once that's finished, we'll place cauldrons all the way across the barn, matching them up next to each lab oven. After that, we'll place one large storage rack positioned 2 tiles away from our cauldrons. Then we'll place another storage rack directly next to that one. We're then going to finish off with our drying racks. We'll place one group of 5 in the center of the room, as well as 2 groups of 8, one on either side of the barn. Now that's the physical layout finished. So let's run through all the destinations. Starting in the growing zone, each of our groups of 7 pots will be routed into the small storage rack that's directly next to them. And our row of 3 pots will be routed back into the storage rack directly to its left. Next, each of our cauldrons will be assigned into the lab oven directly next to it, and then we'll divide the lab ovens in half on each side of the barn. So 3 ovens from the left side go into the left brick press, and 3 ovens on the right side go into the right brick press. Each brick press is then sent into the large storage rack directly next to it, and all that's left is the drying racks. And these are very simple. We're going to take every single drying rack, set them all to heavenly, and then every single one will be designated into this storage rack here. This is our leaf and gasoline manifold. Now we can move on to assign our employees. Beginning with our growing botanist. Each of these guys will get one of the groups of 7 moisture preserving pots near the entrance, and their supply shelf will be set to this storage rack directly to the left of our 3 pots. Our third botanist is then going to be assigned to these 3 pots, as well as the 5 drying racks in the center of the back of the room. And yes, he's rerouting his own pots back into his own storage rack. And this is how you can divide up your tasks for your botanists so that you can make uneven ratios fit anytime that you have odd numbers from what you're producing. Finally, our 2 remaining botanists are going to be dedicated to only drying. So each one will get one of the groups of drying racks in the back of the room on either side of the barn, as well as a small storage rack near one of the groups of 7 for their supply shelf. And finally, you can assign each of the 3 chemists to their own group of 2 lab ovens and 2 cauldrons. And then we can move on to the handlers. We have 2 handlers, red and blue. First, we're going to assign each handler to one of the brick presses on either side of the barn. Then, each of them have the same first 3 tasks, mirrored but on opposite sides of the barn, distributing items from this leaf and gasoline manifold shelf into each of the 6 cauldrons. Now we diverge. The red handler's 4th task is going to be to move items from the buffer shelf directly inside the entrance over to the shelf directly next to it. His 5th task will then be to take items from loading bay 1 and bring them into that buffer shelf directly inside the entrance. Moving back to the blue handler, his 4th task will be to move items from this storage shelf to the right of the manifold into the manifold itself. This is where we're going to manually drop off a full storage shelf worth of gasoline, and this will keep the build running for a full 17 in-game days, so I consider it to be effectively automated. But if you wanted to be fully hands-off, you could get rid of the shelf and just reroute from one of the loading bays into the manifold itself, but I think that would be a little bit more inconvenient. And his 5th task will be to take items from loading bay 2 and bring them into the buffer shelf directly inside the entrance. Now that we have all the assignments out of the way, we can do our item filters. The buffer shelf directly inside the entrance will be filtered like this. All 3 additives plus our soil on the top row, as well as 4 stacks of coca seeds on the bottom row. The botanist supply shelf directly next to it will have the same pattern on the top row, all the additives plus the soil. However, this time on the bottom row we'll have 1 stack of coca seeds, as well as 3 stacks available for coca leaves. When our back-routed botanist harvests his plants, he'll place them on this storage rack. Then, once the storage rack is full, he will take them over to his drying racks and distribute them between them. The final shelf to set up item filtering is our leaf manifold. We're going to set 6 slots to be coca leaves, as well as 2 slots to be gasoline. These 6 coca leaf slots allow us an extra buffer layer, so every time that our chemists use a stack of leaves, they're immediately replaced. and then immediately taken off drying racks and placed on a buffer so that another set of leaves can immediately start drying. And with that, the build is complete, but do not turn it on yet. You must prime this system first. If you activate it immediately, it could take weeks to stabilize. Instead, you need to just allow all of the drying racks and all of the cauldrons to fill up entirely with heavenly leaves before activating the workflow. This is what causes the system to begin in reverse order, and it allows each piece of the system to naturally find its own timer, creating a very smooth and consistent production rhythm. And with that, the build is complete. My speech about additives is finished. Even if no one wants to admit I was right all along, I'm excited for the next chapter of Schedule 1. Once Shrooms releases, I'll be running another large-scale output testing, and I'll also be retesting all of my older data to compare if anything's changed, with updated employee mechanics, and hopefully with a cleaner presentation this time. I know my editing isn't that great, but hopefully it's at least digestible for you guys to get the information that you need. But as always, thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that dumb shit, and have a great rest of your day. Peace out.